there a motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Like we have Chris, Sandy, Jordana, Susan, and myself all in favor of opening the meeting, Mary.
Okay.
And next, if we would all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, great. I see that we have Alex joining us. Hey, Alex. With that, we will move to Yorgos. Public input number 1. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to ask a question, state anything, or make any kind of comments in accordance with the guidelines for public input published on the agenda? If so, just please raise your hand and Mr. Fisher will unmute you or put your question into the chat room. Now would be the time to do that.
No hands are raised.
I see
Oh,
nothing.
we do have one. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Jason Squires.
Okay. Mr. Squires, just state your name only, not your address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Mr. Squire, you're muted.
Scott, do you see the clock ticking?
Actually, yes, but at the moment I'm trying to get
Okay.
Mr. Squire's microphone unmuted.
Mr. Squires, if you can hear us, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, he left the meeting.
Okay. If he comes back, we can just jump in. Well, let's see if he's back and he can.
No,
Okay.
it's Chrissy.
Do we have Jordana and Yorgos?
We do. Jordana is here, Yorgos is here, and Alex is here.
Wonderful, thank you.
Moving on to item section 5 on the agenda, the superintendent's report. Mr. Nichols.
Thanks, Brian. So I wanted to talk about a few things, and as per what we came to, or the understanding we came to last meeting, we tried to list on the agenda the topics that we intended to discuss. So tonight I want to talk about a case status summary, talk a little bit about the quarantine status, and then the challenges for the district regarding remaining open moving forward. So as of today, we have 59 students who are out of school. We have 4 out of that 59 students, 4 students tested positive, 3 are waiting for results. 1 is on a travel quarantine. Of the quarantine students, 42 students were due to exposure in school and 9 due to exposure outside of school. With regard to the teaching staff and or the teaching faculty and staff, at the elementary school, we have 2 teachers out on quarantine, 8 teachers teaching remotely. And if you remember early on, teachers, if they wanted to request an accommodation due to a health concern, were to notify the administrators, and we were to treat every request under the umbrella of the American Disabilities Act. And we ran those requests by council. So again, at the elementary school, you have 8 teachers working remotely, in addition to the 2 teachers who are currently out on quarantine. And at the middle school, high school, you have 10 teachers out on quarantine, and you have 7 teachers working remotely, which brings me to the third topic that I want to talk about, which are or which is, what are the challenges for the district moving forward if we intend to stay open, or if we continue to try to stay open? And the challenges look different at different levels. So we sort of already knew this, but we learned with the case at the high school last week that when there's a case with a high school student, especially a student, the number of teachers required to quarantine is far greater than that which would be required at the middle school or the elementary school. And that's due to the fact that we are not cohorting at the high school level. So if a student is traveling to see different teachers during the school day, he or she is going to thus essentially be a close contact with many more people. So what does that mean moving forward for the high school? What it means is that with every subsequent case, especially with regard to a student, the impact is pretty profound and the challenges for staying open are pretty severe. So this week, for instance, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're really operating very close to having to close. If there was one more case, student case in the high school, we would be moving to remote status because we simply don't have the staff available to operate the school with in-person sessions when we have so many people quarantined. And the same challenges, a little bit to a lesser extent, also exist at the elementary school and the middle school. And if you recall, I said over a month ago that the challenge for our school district moving forward is really going to be the staffing concerns. And as the number of cases increase, and if indeed they do increase, and the number of teachers required to quarantine increase, there comes a point at which it's no longer feasible to remain open. Thankfully, we haven't crossed that threshold yet, but I want the board to be aware that it's a very real concern moving forward, especially when you think about the post-Christmas break likelihood that virus transmission will increase due to the travel and everything that happens over Christmas break. So that's the summary I wanted to provide. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any at this time.
Yeah, just to clarify for the public, and then let's just turn to Mr. Squire's question, which was in the chat box. The shutdown you're talking about currently, if it happens, is a staffing level at the high school, and we're approaching that level potentially at the elementary school. Is that accurate?
I would say, let me go to the chat question.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not quite, I think his question's a little bit different than what I was talking about, but in response to your summary, you're accurate in stating that at the high school level, we're precariously close to not having enough staff to operate in-person instruction due to the number of quarantines related to people being identified as close contacts. That challenge is a little bit less at the elementary and the middle school because students travel in cohorts. So for every positive case, the impact is not as great as it is at the high school. Having said that, 3 or 4 cases at a building could result in that building shutting down, regardless of whether it's the high school or not. So this is something that we're just going to have to deal with in live time as we go through the winter.
Hey, Jeff, quick clarifying question. When you were saying the total COVID cases, that's to date or currently, just to make sure everyone's on the same page?
So with regard to the right now, that was currently.
Currently. So currently we have 4 students out that have tested positive. Okay.
And just today, I sent a notice out to the community, but we did have a high school student test positive. The student was last in school on December 14th. So when you do the walk back 48 hours before the positive test, that thankfully for the school district did not result in additional teachers or students having to quarantine.
Before we turn it over to the rest of the board, I see Diane Hewitt has logged in. She had sent us a question earlier. Diane, do you want to ask that question now, or if not, we can read your question from earlier? Okay. Scott, are we able to unmute Diane Hewitt? Can't hear you, Scott. You're muted.
So is there a way to just read Diane's question?
The question is,
It looks like she's unmuted now too.
Yeah, she's unmuted now.
okay. Diane? Might be some technical difficulties. I'll read Diane's question. She says, are there plans to add academic support back into the school day, and when? Is the first question. If you want to, we can do them one at a time, Jeff, and then I'll read the second part.
Okay, so right now there is not a plan to reintroduce academic support during the 2021 school year. The logistics of how we have to operate due to COVID, and I went over this early on, necessitated, when I say early on, prior to the start of school, necessitated the elimination of the academic support period. And to get very specific, we required teachers to be in school earlier than the start of first period because we can't have kids circulating throughout the hallways in a format that wasn't cohorted. So that necessitated the change that we made. So in answer to her question, the answer is no.
And second part, Jordan, are you there? Are you able to paraphrase the second part?
The second part of her question was about whether the school can do anything to require, in situations where a parent or household member is awaiting test results, to require that the kids stay home from school.
So the answer to that, and Diane was kind enough to pose that question in writing, and I had responded in writing prior to this evening, but I think it's worthwhile that she brings it up so the community can hear. The answer to that is no, because people get tested for different reasons. That's one consideration. So someone could get a test as a pre-surgical clearance, if you will, for a routine medical procedure, and it wouldn't be reasonable to have those students have to stay home while you awaited those results. I think what's prudent, and we have put this out to the community on multiple occasions, is that if you are experiencing symptoms that could be construed as COVID symptoms, and that's a pretty wide umbrella, then it is prudent for you to stay home until you receive word that in fact it's not that. But to require people to stay home while they await testing is not a reasonable position for the school district to take, especially given the guidance that is put out by the Suffolk County Department of Health, the New York State Department of Health, and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. None of those entities suggest people having to remain at home while awaiting the results of the test.
Thank you, Jeff. Let me turn it over to the board at this question. At this point, for questions of Jeff and the administration. Any members of the board?
I have one question, which I think I know the answer to, but I'm asking because it might be good just to air publicly. I imagine that we have some staff and families that are going to be leaving New York State during the holiday break. the school, I'm guessing the school can't legally require that they produce any documentation before they come back in saying that they were tested and clear. It's like an honor system, correct?
Correct. It's an honor system with New York State saying that there's a $10,000 fine that someone could be subject to if they don't adhere to that honor system.
Okay,
And they do have a hotline, if you will, that the school district and others are supposed to report to in the event that we believe someone's not adhering to the guidance, the travel advisories that have been put out.
so currently, if they're traveling beyond an adjoining state, they have to come back and have a clean test 4 days after a quarantine in order to accelerate them being able to enter back into the district, correct?
A little bit different than that. The majority of what you said is correct. So if you travel outside of New York and a contiguous state, then you have two options if you're gone for more than 24 hours. Option number one is the 14-day quarantine. Option number two is you get a test 24 hours prior to leaving the state that you traveled to. And upon your return on day 4 after quarantining, you can get a test. And if that test comes back negative, then you're able to cut your quarantine short.
Thank you for reviewing that.
I had a question. Is there, Jeff, any thought of just giving some sort of, notice to just parents about, trying not to put teachers in difficult positions by, having, kids coming back and talking about, their trip to Georgia or whatever it is. It just seems to me it'd be better for our teachers to not have to feel like they're police officers, the first week back in school. And I don't know if there's any way to try to get in front of that.
Well, I think you identified probably the best way to do it, and it's the best available solution, which is to basically put notice out before vacation, reminding people of the current climate with regard to the virus. I mean, we're all aware of what is emanating out of England with a new genetic sequence, if you will, that results in much more prevalent transmission. We're also aware that we're entering into the most difficult time frame, months, in terms of what history shows us, and both in 1918 and what the scientists are saying currently. So if we put that down to paper and then remind people of the guidance that's been issued by the state and encourage them to follow it, I feel like that's what we can do. Beyond that, as Chris stated, it's sort of the honor system, and we'll do our best to unfortunately be detectives when we have to be. Were you thinking beyond that, Alex? Did you have some other thoughts?
No, I wasn't. But that makes sense. Thank you.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
Any other members of the board questions for Mr. Nichols? Are there any members of the public attending this meeting that have a question for Mr. Nichols? Now would be the time to ask it with respect to information that he just presented. If you could raise your hand, Mr. Fisher would then unmute you. Or you could type a question into the chat room.
There are no hands raised right now.
Nor I don't see any questions in the chat room. So unless there's anything else from a member of the board, we will move on with tonight's agenda. Okay. Item 6 on tonight's agenda, we will start with 6.1, the principal's report.
So Brian, what I thought we'd do with the principal's report is have Ms. Carriero talk a little bit about the update for the middle school, high school, and then we have basically 2 reports, one from the school business administrator and one from Mr. Malone, that could constitute their updates, but one deals with COVID spending and the other with remote learning. That's okay with you?
Yeah, I think that sounds fine.
Okay, so why don't we start out with Ms. Carriero with the middle school, high school update?
Hi all. So the middle school, high school's been working hard. Our seniors, we had 401 applications go out, and students have been accepted already into some great institutions. Our early decision has come back. We had a student get into Miami, Whitman College, Tufts, and New York University. We had 2 students get into Fordham, schools like Seton Hall, Clemson, University of Denver, Penn State, a student getting into the University of Vermont Honors Program. So right now we have a good list, and we're still working on the other applications as well. The Winter Whaler Wars 2 weeks ago, our high school participated in this on a Wednesday and a Friday. There was a remote option for the students that were in person. And then as well as the in-person, Mr. White, Mr. Guinan, and Miss Westoff did an amazing job planning the activities, and it really got the kids' spirits up. The high school fall play happened this past weekend. Opening night was supposed to happen on Thursday. However, due to the snow day that we had and mental health reset, the students performed on Friday and Saturday for a matinee showing. A special shout out to Miss Loopy and Mr. Holden for making it happen and working really hard with the kids. And also, it was great to see the 4 seniors be also celebrated for their hard work over the past 4 years. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we could have somewhat of a semblance of a high school musical, maybe just by pushing it back, and things will be very different in the springtime. Updates on instruction: the 1,200-minute lab requirement is waived, so our science teachers now can take a deep breath trying to get those lab requirements in. So we're going to keep rolling different things out and telling them exactly what instruction and standards need to be hit. And we're just planning on making sure our kids, the balance of the content versus their mental health. There's been that daily health screening and our weekly meeting of the mind to talk about kids and see how they're doing, and then family outreach. And then Wednesday's our early release for the holidays.
Great, thank you. With regard to athletics and wellness, because we have 2 other reports tonight that are going to take a little longer, I told, in speaking with Mr. Bramoff, we were going to provide an update at the next board meeting, and I was going to send some information to the board prior to that meeting, but Section 11 has canceled certain sports that were initially slated to begin in early January. There are sports that are still slated to continue, and Mr. Bramoff and I are talking about how to proceed with those, and we'll update the board in the coming week. With that, the next item on the agenda was a report from our school business administrator, Jennifer Buscemi, talking about or summarizing COVID spending for the current year. And before I turn it over to her, as is the case with Jennifer, with everything she does, she did a very, very thorough job. So much so that she included what she saw as recurring expenses. So expenses that in the event that the virus is not under control by September, expenses that we would have next year and perhaps in subsequent years. I told her that for tonight's presentation, I don't want her to get into the recurring expenses, because right now, hopefully with the rollout of the vaccine come September, I don't think, or I'm hopeful that we won't have those. And there's still a lot for her to review. So with that, Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you.
So Scott's going to put the presentation up, and then I'm going to start. I really focused on the impact of costs on the current year's budget. So I looked at spending going from July 1st, of course, up into the current period of time, and projected many of the costs going out till the end of the fiscal year. So this is a research report that was done by the New York State School Boards Association and also the Association of School Business Officials. And this was actually released a few months ago. And it does talk about all the fiscal challenges that COVID-19 has unfortunately added to school districts and our spending plans and future budgets. So a lot of the newspaper articles that talked about average spending and what districts were spending their money funds on came directly out of this report. And this report's available online for anyone to read, and it goes into a lot of detail. But New York schools have incurred additional costs related to the pandemic. And of course, leading the list of expenses is the purchase of personal protective equipment, or PPE, followed by new technology and additional staffing. Districts statewide plan on spending an average of $500,000 to cover these costs related to COVID-19. And spending totaled more than $79 million statewide, including more than $24 million across Long Island. Districts have tapped into their reserves and shifted funds from other budgets to cover the costs. And unfortunately, low wealth districts are spending more compared with the higher wealth districts. And we'll go into the reasons why towards the end of the presentation. So I focused on how much the district was spending just in staffing changes. So the cost of additional staff, unemployment benefits, overtime, and expanded leave benefits that right now are offered through the federal and state governments. Staffing changes. We had approximately 10 employees retire, and they retired for various reasons, but we wanted to just see what the impact would be for the current year's budget. So we compared that to the 24 employees that were hired to replace some of the retirees and also provide additional staff due to the pandemic. So if you take the employees who retired and you project whatever their salaries and health insurance benefits would have been this year, it came out to roughly $1,367,364. We offset that with the new employees that were hired, and we came up with additional spending of $482,661 just in additional staff that was needed for the current year. We also had to pay additional unemployment benefits. So early in the pandemic, the executive orders came out and the governor basically said that we had to continue paying all of our contract employees their full salary, even though schools were closed and they weren't working. But we had a lot of substitute teachers that we were not paying. And we also had staff who lost income from other jobs. So unfortunately, our unemployment bills went up because of this reason, and they were all eligible to receive unemployment. So unemployment costs right now are roughly $38,443. Our custodians also had to work additional hours right before school opened. There was a lot of cleaning that was done. There was a lot of changes that were made to bathrooms. There were things that had to be installed. And custodial overtime came to $18,134. The federal government also had expanded paid sick leave benefits, and New York State also offers a benefit. The benefit is basically paid out to any employees who are quarantined or who are isolated or have to care for members who are quarantined and isolated. They get about 80 hours benefit for a 2-week period. So we looked back to see how many employees fit the bill or receive these benefits, and that came out to another $29,875. So total projected costs on staffing changes related to COVID-19 came out to $569,114. And these are really projections till the end of the school year, since we really did project everyone's salaries up till then. And then, of course, we may have additional costs for family medical leave benefits and throughout the year. But the law for the family medical leave benefits is actually expiring at the end of this year. And as far as we know, they have not expanded that benefit. And unemployment benefits, we don't see that increasing at all because we actually have a lot of subs now working. So we went back then through the budget to see what our projected savings would be, because a lot of staff, they're not getting paid for their stipends, for co-curricular activities, for leading clubs. Also, coaches aren't getting paid because athletics are not running. And also there's a lot of savings in transportation because we're not having field trips. We're not transporting students to games. And we were able to work with the administrators and determine, just projecting till the end of the year, what would not be running if things stayed the same. And our total projected savings was $471,591. So if you just take the difference between the costs and the savings, our budget impact is really $97,523 for the year, just for staffing changes. And this basically would come out of the 2 contingency budget codes that we have set up for salary changes, salary adjustments, new hires. There's 2 codes that are basically during the budget process every year are set aside as contingency for any of those reasons. So now we'll talk a little bit about all of the items that had to be purchased in order to safely open schools. So we went through every department and just getting lists from all the administrators and going through purchase orders. We determined that there were a lot of items purchased for health and safety reasons, PPE. There was additional cleaning products purchased, technology, and some other things that didn't fit into those other 4 categories. So health and safety items, you can see it's a long list of items, and I summarize them on the next page. So on the next slide, you'll see that we spent roughly $2,500 buying new toilet seat covers. We bought new paper towel dispensers. A lot of the money was spent on air purifiers. We also have additional hand washing, sanitizing supplies. We retrofitted our water fountains with some changes, purchased some floor tape, and then we also spent a lot of money on our health screening for visitors and employees. So that would include the software costs, the tablets that they need in the front offices for the questioning the visitors, and also any additional ongoing costs related to health screenings. And then there was some plexiglass sneeze guards purchased. So total health and safety costs came out to $91,319.66. Then we go into PPE, and there was a lot of PPE purchased throughout the district, mostly for face coverings, face shields, isolation gowns. But the dollar amount really was not, it was really lower than average for most districts. So altogether, there was about $7,407 worth of PPE purchased throughout the district. And then the next slide shows all of the cleaning supplies that were purchased over and above the regular cleaning supply, the custodial cleaning supplies that would be purchased each year. We also have the tent rentals and other miscellaneous items that were purchased. And that came out to $51,677. And then we have technology. So you can see the big ticket items in our technology purposes come from just buying additional laptops, iPads. There were AirPods purchased for all the staff. There was additional webcams that needed to be installed. And also we had to purchase some subscriptions for remote learning, hybrid learning, and total technology costs came to $145,473. So in summary, if you look at our total cost of equipment, materials, and supplies, you can see overall we spent $295,876 on just equipment, materials, and supplies. On tonight's agenda, you'll actually see a budget transfer going back for monies going back into the facilities and technology budgets, because this is where most of the money was spent out of, to replenish those funds, because all of these items were unanticipated and not budgeted for. Fortunately, we did receive our health insurance rates just a few weeks ago, and we were able to project our health insurance costs out till the end of the school year. We did budget for a 10% increase, which was in line with previous year's increases, just because we have had years where health insurance has gone up 13%, and then we've had years where it's gone
I think we lost you, Jennifer.
I hear a lot of kids.
Scott, is Jennifer's screen locked because she lost her internet connection?
It seems that way. Something happened on her side. Yeah. I have the remaining slides. I can go through without her, just for
No.
visual purposes, without explanation.
Scott, will we email this? Because it's helpful to be able to go back and look at stuff. I know the board's seeing all these numbers for the first time. Do you know if it's, I don't see it attached to the agenda.
I don't think it is, Chris,
Okay,
but we can forward it to you after tonight's presentation.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry about that. I actually
no.
had some technical difficulties, but I will definitely email this to everyone.
That's
Welcome
right.
back.
And this is, listen, this has been, we're holidays, it's been crunch time, and I'm just really glad to get this much of a detailed spreadsheet. So,
Presentation's fantastic. It's fantastic. I just, in terms of having questions, we can follow up after the meeting with questions. That's all.
Oh, yes, definitely. So, yes, I wanted to talk about how we were able to replenish their budgets through taking some funds out of the health insurance line, just because our health insurance increase this year going into 2021 turned out to be 4%, which was great, and we did give us some surplus in that area. So if you go to the last slide really does summarize the total projected cost of additional staff and the projected cost of equipment, materials, and supplies. This is the impact on the budget overall, and you're looking at roughly $393,399, worth of funds that we did have to go ahead and move some funds around. We didn't have to tap into reserves like other districts have had to, and this is mainly because we do have such, our budget does include a lot of the programs and the athletics, and it does provide a very, rich amount of clubs and enrichment programs for the students. So we were able to have savings in that area, and that's how we were able to cover many of these costs. And unfortunately, a lot of the lower wealth districts were not able to do this, and they did have to tap into savings and reserves to pay for a lot of these costs.
Hey, Jennifer, it's Yorgos. Just a quick question. Are these costs the 393,000 year to date, or this is the total projected cost?
Well, we projected most of this stuff is projected out because a lot of this stuff is just one-time purchases. So for instance, the technology items, they're all one-shots.
Because we're not going to need additional laptops and all this stuff.
Exactly. Not anymore till June. We also have all the staffing is projected out until June. So this is really all of the impact for the current school year budget. As Jeff was saying in the beginning of the presentation, that we are going to have some reoccurring costs if things stay the same going into next year's budget, but they're not going to be anywhere near what we incurred this year, just because we did have a lot of one-shot, bigger ticket items that had to get purchased.
But I mean, the figure seems pretty moderate to me comparing with what we had to deal with. It's not like a big hit in our budget, right?
No, it's definitely below average. Average across New York State, they were looking at an additional 500,000 overall. So we're definitely below average. And I think that, a lot of the purchases that the administrators have made, they were just very smart in thinking whether or not, they really did try to look at what they were purchasing and seeing what could be used moving forward and, saving wherever they can. A lot of people have not spent or moved forward with the things that they budgeted for this year just because they weren't sure if they were going to have enough because of these new items that came up.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. This is, I had asked for this, and this is more detailed and more thorough than I had anticipated. So kudos to you, as always. Great report. I have two questions. One's for you and one is for Scott. So I'll start with you, Jennifer. Does this take into account any possible cost related to if we have to do testing in the school itself? I know we're looking at, do we do it in-house or outsource it? Is there like a certain number per week or month that costs and that would be additional to this?
Why don't I answer that, Chris?
That's good.
So the current options right now are, one option would be to have the tests supplied by the Suffolk County Department of Health through the New York State Department of Health, in which case we would not be responsible for any costs associated with the actual tests, but we would be responsible for staffing related to testing. And so tonight you'll see later on in the agenda, 2 registered nurses being appointed in the event that we choose that route at $50 an hour. So depending on the zone designation, and again, you're not required to test unless you receive a microcluster designation. The microcluster designations have different thresholds that districts have to adhere to. So red is 30% over 1 month. Those people in attendance, which is about 300. Orange is 20%, which is about 200. That's a pretty good guesstimate. So if you do the math, I think you're looking at about, if you're looking at 40 hours at $50 an hour, it's roughly $1,000 over the course of a month, in addition to the other staff that would have to be deployed to assist in the administrivia related to inputting the data, organizing the tests and the testing and all that. So you're probably looking at about $3,000 to $4,000 a month in addition. Another option is to go with an outside lab, and we've made inquiries along those lines. And the way that would work is that anybody with health insurance, there would be no cost for the test or the staffing. However, for those people who are uninsured, the district would be charged $85 per test. So this is a lot of speculation, but if you were to assume, let's just say an orange designation with 200 tests, if we were to assume a 10% of the staff and the student population are uninsured, that comes to 20, and 20 times 85 comes to $2,000. So even if you were to double that and say 20% of the students and the staff over the course of a month had to be tested, if we were to assume that 20% of the entire populace that is required to be tested was uninsured, that would be 40 out of 200, 40 times $85 is roughly $4,000, which is still less expensive than going the route of staffing it on our own. The other significant difference with the testing, which is not the question you asked, is that with the lab, the test administered would be PCR tests or molecular tests versus the rapid tests, which are the tests that would be utilized if we were to contract or go through the Suffolk County Department of Health. And as you know, the accuracy is significantly different between the 2 tests. So in answer to your question, I think conservatively, if we do have to test between now and the end of the year, we're in a microcluster designation. To be safe, I would budget between $4,000 and $5,000 a month, as long as we remain open.
All right, well, so thank you for that. That was very thorough. And the bottom line is that it's not a big additional cost compared to the costs we're incurring.
No, and if Jennifer did a very thorough job, but in answer to Yorgos's question, when he made the comment that it doesn't seem that significant, 390,000 is less than 1% of our operating budget. And with the changes that we were forced to deal with, we did very well. So, and thankfully, I think we had budgeted 10% anticipated health insurance increase. And the fact that we came in at 4%, that 6% differential leaves us the funds, as Jennifer explained, to sort of cover everything.
Which is great. Thank you for that. And then my other question, I think, is related, would go to Scott, which is, since technology is a big part of some of the additional costs, And it seems like we've purchased some things that under normal circumstances we wouldn't have purchased. Does this mean that in the coming year or two, we may have less technology costs because we've kind of have some additional equipment, or is it unrelated?
It is related, but what we were able to do, what we were forced to do actually, is we brought the technology to every single student all the way down to the pre-K level, which we hadn't needed
Right.
to do previously. So that's where you're seeing the difference with the iPads, especially. That enabled us to provide one-to-one at the lower grade levels for those students, to give them devices, where previously we were focused on the Chromebooks, which only lent themselves to the older students.
Right. Thanks.
Are there any other board questions for Jeff or Jennifer or Scott?
I just had a comment. Just wanted to say the presentation was excellent and how fortunate we are to have Jennifer back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Yep. Thank you, Jennifer. Seeing or hearing no other board questions, then we will move on to 7.1 on the agenda, the Sag Harbor Elementary School.
So I had asked Mr. Malone to present a remote learning update because he was unable to present when we had done the middle school, high school a few weeks ago. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Nichols. Good evening, everyone. So actually, tonight what you'll see is kind of an update of overall how things have been going at both the Learning Center and the elementary school thus far. With the help of the entire faculty and staff, we put together a presentation, which I hope gives you a glimpse of the successes, some of the challenges that we've faced, and some of the things that have been sort of pleasant surprises. We did a lot of planning all summer, and we weren't totally sure how things were going to go, but overall, we've been pleasantly surprised, very pleased with, the work, the instruction that's happening in the classrooms, and also, how the children are just faring, how they're feeling about school each day and the overall experience. In particular, you're going to hear 4 teachers speaking. I asked Mr. Reed, who's a 4th grade teacher, in person. Ms. Prokosky is teaching 1st grade in person. Ginny Kushner is teaching a remote class at the 4th grade level. And you'll also hear Coach Shelley Cottrell, and she's going to speak about the mask breaks and the phys ed program and how that's incorporated. So we kind of put everything together in a presentation. And Scott, if you can air that for everyone, I'd appreciate it.
Fine.
This school year has been the most different in my 33 years of teaching. But instead of challenges, I've been finding opportunities. The first challenge was maintaining enthusiasm and interconnectedness while social distancing and wearing masks in the classroom. However, by implementing many technological platforms provided by the district, daily projects, and new teaching methods like the flip design, our days have been profitable and exciting. I just had to rethink and reinvent. The students were receptive and loved everything that looked new.
Hi, this is Ginny Kushner. I am currently teaching 4th grade remotely, and I am curriculum planning with Liz Sorozinski. So we're doing sort of a 4th, 5th, and 6th grade planning together. Some of the challenges that I was concerned about when we began were how can we work side by side with students? We really miss that kind of a connection. What would the technology issues be? How could we incorporate hands-on activities in meaningful ways? How can we provide differentiated work? How can we individualize when you're on screen with the entire class? I organized a couple of field trips so we can meet as a class, outdoor trips, and we could sort of bond together, and that's been really successful. And also just reminding yourself that it is more than okay to take the time for conversations not related to the curriculum, sharing our pets on screen, sharing weekend activities, sharing anything new, and sometimes just letting them have a few minutes to speak. And I guess the biggest thing of all is to just keep your sense of humor, because when you're working on screen, kids forget they're on screen, I think, and sometimes they're unmuted or they're drumming or doing something, and you have to laugh and you have to remember what it's like to be a kid and how we're all going through this in this crazy time right now. So I feel good about what's happening, and I feel like it can only keep getting better and keep evolving.
Hi, this is Coach Cottrell. I'm going to talk a little bit about the elementary school PE and mask break program. All elementary school students go outside for a 20-minute mask break in the morning and in the afternoon. Grades are sent outside at designated time slots, and each cohort is assigned to either the field, the multipurpose court, or the playground. Locations rotate each day, and when grades have multiple cohorts in the same space, boundaries are set up to keep the group separated. In addition, each student gets a 25-minute recess in the middle of the day. This year, Coach Katz and I have leveraged the mask break schedule for our physical education curriculum. During the morning mask break, we run fitness activities for the groups on the multipurpose court and field. And during the afternoon mask break, we run modified PE units. So far this year, students have played pickleball, soccer, boxball, tail tag, modified football, pillow polo, and basketball. Students are enjoying the time outside and are getting more activity than under a normal schedule. Boys and girls never get bored because their mask break locations change daily. We've been lucky so far with the weather, but a few rainy days have made it harder, and we've needed to use the gym where students can play but still need to wear their masks. All things considered, this has been a great way to keep the students active, safe, and having fun during the school day. Thank you.
I know I've been extremely happy to be back in the classroom and to be back working in person with the kids, and I can tell that the kids are happy to be here. You know, they come every day, they wear their masks, they're ready to learn, and as challenging as this year has been, I've seen a lot of positives come out of the year so far, and I think one of the biggest positives I've seen is the sense of responsibility that the children have. Having these small class sizes has been amazing because it's really allowed me as the teacher to get to know my kids on a personal level and to kind of support the kids if there's a need. So the small class size has been awesome, and the amount of growth and progress that these kids have made in just 4 short months has been awesome to see.
My Christmas. My tree is green. My star is yellow.
Okay. So again, a big thank you to everyone on the faculty and staff, in particular those 4 teachers that shared their thoughts and perspectives on the year. You know, I hope that provides for everybody kind of a snapshot of how things are going. A lot of positives. We've overcome some challenges and we've learned a lot along the way. I think most importantly, from everything I'm seeing, hearing from teachers and students and parents, the overall experience has been wonderful for the children. I think the level of learning that we're witnessing is really strong, and we're looking forward to a continuation of the year that started off well.
That was great, Matt. Thank you.
Oh my God, it was so
Very
cute.
welcome.
It was so cute.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any board questions for Mr. Malone? All right, great. Moving on to section 8 of our agenda. which is policy actions. Item 8.1, which is to approve the first reading of policy 5676, which is privacy and security for student data and teacher and principal data. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Mary, if you could open up the voting, please.
Mary, I can't get mine open. Just put me down. See, yes, I'm gonna go back in and try to reopen it.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Great. Item 8.2. Be it resolved that the Board of Education approves the first reading of policy 3520, extraordinary circumstances. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Discussion? Okay. Mary, please open up the voting.
I'm refreshing, Mary.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Great. Okay. Section 9 of our agenda, our consent agenda. Is there a motion on consent agenda items 9.2 through 9.17?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? No discussion. Mary, please open up the voting.
That's unanimous.
Moving on to section 10 of our agenda. I'm going to ask Jordana to take over. I'm going to recuse myself on 10.1 or abstain from.
No problem. And before we do, just a thank you in the consent agenda to all of those people who've stepped up to assist as substitutes. It's really awesome and needed. Can I get a motion to approve action item 10.1, appointing Kelly DeSessa as a registered professional nurse?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, Mary, I think we can open up the voting.
Motion carried.
Great. And can I get a motion to appoint Molly McLaughlin as a registered professional nurse under 10.2?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, we can open up the voting.
That's unanimous.
Carrying on to our agenda item 13 at this point. Public input number 2. Is there anybody here from the public that would like to make a statement, ask a question? Now would be the time to do that, either raising your hand or putting a message into the chat box. Give it a second, and then Mr. Fisher.
I do not see any hands raised or any chat comments.
Before we move on to item 14, any other questions or anything from members of the board at this point for what we went over on tonight's agenda?
Oh, I just have a question for the superintendent, and it's more for the benefit of the public and the reporting. We're still interested in getting more applications for substitute teachers, correct?
You're
So
muted.
if anyone is potentially interested in being a substitute teacher, there are spots in our district. Thanks.
Yes, in answer to your question, Chris, we're still accepting applications for substitute teachers. The more we have, the better equipped we are to remain open. It doesn't address all of the logistical concerns, because at some point, if you have too many subs in the building, it doesn't make sense programmatically to remain open. It makes more sense to go remote, but it's nice to have the option of having subs available so that at least we can thoroughly vet that decision rather than having it made for us. So in answer to your question, if you are watching this video or you read about the meeting, if you have an interest in subbing, please contact the district office, Maria Domchek, and she'll walk you through the process, the application process.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. With that, item 14.1 on the agenda is there a motion to convene into executive session to discuss pending litigation and a contractual matter?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, I just want to remind everybody that the play is on streaming today and tomorrow. I had the opportunity to sing it. It was amazing. So please don't miss out on these really talented thespians that we have at our school, because it was great to see them all together as their little family. So just shout out to take that into consideration, please.
Thank you, Sandy. Yes, excellent. And also, just before the board votes on this, just so the public knows, if the motion does carry and we go into executive session, the board will not take any action when we come out of executive session, aside from adjourning the public meeting. With that, I know there was a motion and a second. If you could open up the voting, please, Mary. Thanks.
Sorry, Brian.
Oh, no, not at all. Perfect.
Brian, I would just want to add, I want to thank all the staff at the school, and I hope they have a very safe and happy holiday season, along with the members of our school community. So the fact that we've made it to the end of December and have had school open is a testament to commitment and hard work and a little bit of luck. So I want to thank everybody for that.
Great. I think the whole board joins in that, Chris. Thank you.
All right, we're logging off.
Had the motion due, Mary?
That was unanimous.
Okay, great. So yes, we will log off, and everyone on the board, if members, please log into the other link. Thanks.
Good night.
And happy holidays.
Thank you. Bye, Mary.